Chapter 2 of Clubhouse Confessions. Caesar's Night on the Town. The next morning proved to be a cool and dreary one for more reasons than one. My confidence level was lower than a nightcrawler's scrotum, and I was throwing today. Unlike virtually every other day in my professional life, I dreaded going to the ballpark on this one. After breakfast with Sam, I went to the clubhouse, dressed quietly, and headed for the field so as not to have to talk with anyone. I don't want to get too attached to anybody or anything around here, just in case. This morning's work was to be live batting practice, where the pitchers air out at about 80% of their good stuff against the hitters. This way, the pitching staff can ease into game-type activity while giving the hitters a chance to sharpen up their timing in preparation for the start of our exhibition schedule. I was scheduled to throw for 10 to 12 minutes and would be the second man to the mound. Billy Reynolds was to be the first hurler out. Reynolds, 6'7", and about 235, can run it up to the plate real quick. He'd played college basketball at Butler and was nicknamed Machine for his shooting prowess. But methinks it's because his fastball seems like a shot out of a high-powered rifle. Of course, the veteran hitters didn't want to go into the cage against Machine because his lively fastball tended to sail around the strike zone, thus jamming hitters on occasion and breaking bats. A good fist shot from Reynolds on a cold and raw morning like this would feel like you just grabbed a handful of those friggin' African killer bees. So when Machine started throwing, I began to loosen up in the bullpen, throwing to Slime. The first thing that I noticed was that my good fastball was slightly below average and was straighter than a horny dog's dick. The second thing that came to me was that Slime couldn't catch the clap in a Mexican whorehouse. As luck would have it, they called me in before I could find anything decent enough quality to get a blind man out, let alone somebody who hits baseballs for a living. The first guy that I'm to face was Raul Spider Vasquez, an up-and-coming young shortstop from the Dominican Republic. Unlike most Latin middle infielders, Spider was a fairly good-sized guy at about 6'2" and about 195 pounds, and, well, he carried a reputation for having some pop in his bat. The first 4 pitches that I threw to Spider were ripped in various directions around the ballpark. This pissed me off to a major extent, so my 5th offering was aimed just in front of his bat bill. It sent him sprawling in the dirt to avoid the message that I was sending. Well, that got Spider's Latin blood boiling pretty good. In fact, he got more excited than a dozen blind lesbians on a tuna boat. He jumped up shouting, "Fuck you, you fucking dick sucker." I hollered back to him that he should try to perform an unnatural sex act with himself and get back up to home plate like a man who had a little hair on his ass. At this point, it was becoming more and more apparent that I need to get that little bastard off of my pitches. So I wound up and threw my very best changeup. But as my current streak of good fortune would have it, it floated in about belt high and was centered directly over home plate. As it neared the dish, a very predictable grin came to Spider's face, and he proceeded to drub the son of a into another time zone. I was told that it landed about 420 feet away high on the embankment beyond the left center field fence. As soon as he touched it off, I muttered, "Shit," under my breath. But I wouldn't turn to watch the frequent flyer miles that was piling up. Instead, while the ball was in flight, I decided that Plan 5D was in order. It's either that or a trip to the unemployment office. But there's only one problem with Plan D. I have absolutely no goddamned idea what 5D was. So I turned my back to the plate, walking to the grass behind the hill in deep thought. I wondered how I could at least keep these guys in the ballpark and concluded that some sinking movement was necessary. I had always had a serviceable two-seam fastball, a pitch that runs down and into the right-handed batters. Theoretically, that downward movement would allow me to at least keep the line drives in the yard. I gripped a new ball with the smooth part of the skin along the seams, pinching it a little with my first finger. My first offering dropped in crisply toward the inside corner, and Spider's big cut rewarded him with a shattered Louisville slugger and a pair of hands that felt like he'd just stuck both pinkies into a light socket. After that, he couldn't even get the ball airborne off of me. Throughout the rest of the session, I threw nothing but the sinker, and he was rewarded with a high percentage of ground balls and a couple more serious jam jabs. Nobody else took me deep. After my mound stint was over, I was encouraged, but am enough of a realist to know that I've got to come up with something more than a chicken shit little sinker to stick around, especially in the hitter-friendly North American League. You see, the thing to remember about the Nally, that's what we call it, is that it's about as unfriendly of an environment for pitchers as God could have ever possibly devised. You have a brutally hot and dry climate in the southwest cities of Phoenix, Albuquerque, and Tucson. So air drag is reduced considerably. Breaking pitches don't curve nearly as much as they do in cooler air, and solidly hit balls carry forever. On the other hand, you have high-altitude ballparks in Calgary, Salt Lake City, and Colorado Springs. Since the reduced air density won't allow breaking balls to bite the air as much, and balls hit in the air seem to carry ceaselessly, you have a different combination ripe for scoring runs in bunches. Anybody with an ERA of under 400 in this league is having a hell of a season. In fact, an ERA under
500 is quite acceptable. In the clubhouse after the workout, I apologized to Spider. He let me know that he wasn't mad, that it was just a competitive thing. Baseball players are like that. They'll break their ass to beat you on the field, but most are pretty good guys away from the ballpark. I felt a lot better when I went to the shower that afternoon than I did when I walked into the clubhouse earlier in the day. Coming out from my rinse and spin dry, I couldn't believe my eyes. There stood Slime again, buck naked, and hovering over the food table. Whether or not he'd showered prior to that time or not didn't make any freaking difference to me. In the recorded annals of mankind, Slime was one of the dirtiest people to smudge the face of the earth. This asshole always smelled like the Louisiana swamps that he'd grown up in. His hair was shampooed the second Saturday every month, whether it needed to or not, and he always had pimples on his back and ass for not keeping his skin clean. I would make a sizable bet that there wasn't a woman in all of Arizona that would let him ball her without putting a bottle of that nasty orange-colored disinfectant on his root before mounting up. And talk about dumb. This fuck thinks that Gaelic is a male Irish cocksucker. So at the risk of pissing off my teammates by butchering their lunch, I hustled over to the clubhouse's outer door and snatched the CO2 fire extinguisher from the wall. Then I snuck into the training room and hid behind a towel hamper. I took careful aim and fired. I coated the filthy son of a bitch with a white powder akin to a two-coat industrial-grade whitewashing. As I emptied the entire canister onto his torso, Shampoo screamed, "Aw, Miller, you motherfucker!" I barked back, "Slime, you goddamn pig. If you want lunch, I hear they have a buffet today over at the sperm bank. Why don't you go over there and get your fill? That's about your fucking speed." I dressed quickly and left into a standing ovation from my teammates. Professional baseball is one hell of a grind, especially in the minor leagues. Travel and accommodations are generally about as pleasant as root canal surgery, and you get very few days off. In fact, the Loggers have only 8 scheduled open dates over a 144-game schedule that starts around the second week of April and ends Labor Day weekend in early September. Odds are pretty good that most, if not all of those days, will be lost to make up rainouts from earlier in the year. Rumor has it that the Tacoma ownership group nearly named the club the Tacoma Wet Sox before finally settling on the name Loggers. With many ball players, laughter and the World Grappling Association are the only true forms of sanity left in the world today. In that I have a unique capacity to make grown men laugh. Guys like me are needed to keep the rest of the club from going crazy over the course of the year. Not to brag, but clever practical jokes are my forte. Now, I won't be the guy who invented the ultimate hot foot, but I won't hesitate to proclaim that I took it to a new and improved art form. One of those endless nighttime bus rides in the Midwest League a few years back, somewhere between Limp Dick and Cornhole, Iowa, Bobo Gleason's snoring was more than any human should have to endure. Scotty Parr, a young left-handed pitcher from Boise, was sitting in the seat directly behind me. He'd been having some minor arm soreness and was carrying a small bottle of rubbing alcohol with him. I whispered, "Scotty, give me that stuff. I'm putting an end to this horse shit right now." So I walked back several rows to the toilet and collected a wad of paper towels. I coated them thoroughly with the solvent and crawled forward to where Gleason reclined in his seat. I wiped down his Adidas sneakers with a real good and set them on fire with a half-smoked Winston. "Well, folks, I'm here to tell you that the snoring son of a bitch jumped around like a Ubangi witch doctor with 5,000 fire ants up his ass for at least 5 minutes. Needless to say, Bobo never slipped on a bus for the rest of the year, and I'll guarantee you that the rest of the club was saved a bunch of sleep because of it. The rest of the guys were, by my reckoning, eternally grateful for my consideration of their slumber habits. Meanwhile, back at the Scottsdale Best Western, our spring training home away from home, I decided to go out with Sam for a few Miller Genuine drafts and, with some luck, some entertainment for Caesar. You see, I named my best buddy, Caesar, after the Shakespearean line, "We came here not to praise Caesar, but to bury him." Some of the local wolf cookie might find the line humorous. It had happened before. Besides, I'm not going to have to throw tomorrow, and a sound hangover won't hurt my chances to win a spot on this club. So we strolled into the hotel parking lot and crawled into Sam's Firebird, heading down the yellow brick road to fame and fortune. Or the county jail. Whichever comes first. We pulled into the parking lot at a place called Harpo's in downtown Tempe at about 5:30. Harpo's was a place the minor league ball players in the valley liked to hang around since the beer was cold, the food well above decent, and a fair amount of nookie could normally be found there. Besides, the prices at Harpo's were affordable to the guys making minor league cash, and they had two kinds of music that most of us enjoyed, country and western. Big league players wouldn't be caught dead there. It was too deplorable for people with money. We grabbed a table in the back corner so that we could survey all the comings and goings in the joint. Then, lo and behold, who comes over to serve our table? It was our old friend, Wanda. I shit you not, that's her real name. Wanda's a redhead, somewhere between 50 and 65 years old, wears too much makeup, and is probably too friendly for her own good. But she's been here for a very long time and as nice as she can be. She's a salty old broad who'd gotten accustomed to getting her ass pinched 100 times a day. We became friendly when I broke up a fight before it could start in there, and she still remembered me from my bygone years. When she saw me, she howled, "Jim Miller, you horny bastard! Are you still fucking around playing a boys' game for a living?" I smiled broadly and said, "You bet, you gorgeous thing. How the hell are you? You still looking good as ever." I wasn't lying. Wanda, for an older woman, has a fairly strong set of lungs and a very pleasant face to look at. She'd managed to keep her figure pretty well despite years of making a living on her feet for 8 hours a day, as well as quite a few hard ones at night. To tell you the truth, I'm pretty sure that Wanda could drink me under the table with one arm tied behind her back. Whoa! Stop right there. Who made up that saying anyway? What does having an arm tied behind a person have to do with the ability to swill whiskey? I hate that fucking saying, and if I ever meet the guy who wrote it, I'm gonna kick his ass. Anyhow, in a modest alcohol-induced stupor, I'd probably introduce old One-Eye to Wanda myself. But what I appreciate most about Wanda was the fact that she had the cojones to throw any low-born butthole that didn't mind his manners in her place of business right out the front door. Don't get drunk and utter nasties to any of the sweet young patrons or the female employees at Harpo's, or Wanda would have your ass down the road kicking rocks faster than you can say shit flows downhill. As we hugged one another, I asked, "Really, Wanda, how are you?" She gave me a kiss full on the lips and replied, "Jimmy, I'm still able to play doctor when the notion overwhelms me. Not bad for an old broad, don't you think?" I said, "Wanda, talk dirty to me and I'll love you forever." She proceeded to kiss Sam as well and announced that the first pitcher of grog was on her. We sat back to check out the place. It was still early,
and the local blue-collar folks were still hammering down a few cold ones and were mostly minding their own business. A couple of barracudas lounged at the end of the bar working hard just to stay upright. It was obvious that they were trying to select the man of their dreams, although that couldn't have been terribly easy for them since they were shit-faced, almost to the point of needing a seatbelt to stay on their bar stools. After watching them for a short while, I concluded that their search process was being hindered greatly by their stupors because both squinted and tried to refocus continuously. With the obvious large quantity of liquor on board, their eyesight had really been fucked up. Both were in their early 20s, one blonde and one brunette, and were remarkably nondescript. When he saw them, Sam told me that he thought that the herpes over-under odds in Vegas had them posted as way over. As luck would have it, they ultimately turned their gaze our way, and when they started staggering over toward us, I told Sam, "Hang on to your balls, big fella. A world of shit is about to drop on our fucking heads." Upon reaching our table, the blonde piped up,
"Hi, my name's Cindy and this is Sharon. Mind if we sit down?"
I responded in a half panic. Sorry, ladies. We're just waiting for our wives." Sharon, the brunette, then asked,
"Then why don't either of you have wedding rings? You don't even have tan lines where you should have taken them off."
We were seriously floundering about then and couldn't come up with anything in our truly simple minds that would run these two off. It was time to break out our secret weapon. What secret weapon, you ask? Why, Sam's sphincter, of course. He rocked over on his left cheek and cut loose with an anal explosion that could have been mistaken for a fast freight derailing. Son of a bitch! Those two bimbos were so shocked that they didn't know whether to shit or go blind. If I were a sporting man, I would have bet the farm and my drunken cat that they would have closed one eye and farted.
"You're no gentleman,"
Cindy chided. Sam looked her right in the eye and announced, "He's not either," in reference to yours truly. About that time, the aroma from the eruption hit us like a goddamned Mack truck. It smelled like the dog chow factory outside Denver, and once our two friends got a whiff of it, they took off like their pubic hair had been set afire. Between the gasps for clean air, I offered my muffled congratulations to him. "Thank you, you short-peckered friend. Would you care to name that effort?" You see, Sam took the philosophy that if Picasso named his paintings, then he should name his farts. Picasso had his talent, Sam has his own. So right there is probably as good a time as any to explain the unique talent that my roomie possesses. Simply put, Sam Stone can out-fart any man on planet Earth, and quite probably the entire Milky Way. Aside from the $6 million man, he is the only guy in our universe with what must be a bionic butthole. Many of his more notable blasts are legendary in the baseball community, and the scouting report around the Nally is that if you were to give him an enema, you could bury him in a shot glass. And I'm here to tell you, root hog or die, that he can fart on command. Rumor has it that he once cleared an entire lecture hall of approximately 400 students, 5 teachers' aides, the professors, and 2 janitors during a 100-level geology class while doing his undergrad work at LSU. I have sworn testimony from former teammates that on at least 4 separate occasions, he personally forced team buses to stop for emergency evacuations. Sam has 3 grades of bus trip farts that describe in depth and clarity their gruesome collateral damage. Number 1, the 50-miler. One of these are usually good to hang in the upper reaches of the coach for about an hour or so. The 100-miler. This category of colon rattling is normally ripe for a little more than 2 hours, and an average of 2 teammates get physically ill. And last but not least, the ultimate, the 200-miler. A discharge whose brutality can assault your senses all freaking night long. Regardless of the temperature outdoors, all the windows are going to be wide open for at least 3 hours, and sometimes longer. That concludes this excerpt from Clubhouse Confessions. To read the full novel, go to the Google Play Store or the Apple iTunes Store and search Clubhouse Confessions, a novel by D. D. MacDonald.